Okay. We'll call this meeting to order. I spoke with Larry this morning, and because of the unusual circumstances, I might suggest to the commission that since Ron Cayley is here, he can help run the meeting with me, and he and I can run it for you guys if that suits you well.
Sounds good to me.
Okay.
Yeah, good idea.
Sounds good to me, too.
All right. So the meeting is called to order. We'll do a roll call.
Yeah.
Ron, you want to do a roll call?
Yeah, we'll start with a roll call. We'll just welcome everybody and thanks for dialing in, because they promised me toilet paper if I came today, so I guess you guys are out of luck, but so let's start with a roll call. Commissioner Geis? Commissioner Geis? He was there just a few minutes ago. We'll come back. Commissioner Glick? I'm here. Commissioner Cott?
Here.
Commissioner Lancaster?
Here.
Commissioner Little?
Here.
Commissioner Purcell?
Here.
Commissioner Suker?
Here.
Commissioner Wagner?
Here.
And Commissioner Yankee.
Here.
So we have established a quorum. Do we want to do introductions to the audience?
Yeah, we've got a few people here in the room. I am Brandon Gebhardt, Water Development.
Jason Mead, Water Development.
Barry Lawrence, Water Development.
Nancy Kastner, Water Development.
Jody Pring, Water Development.
Jody Pavlika, Water Development.
And Steve Wolf with the State Engineer's Office.
And Ron Cayley, Commissioner. So I guess first order of business should be election of officers. So do we have some interest from some commissioners? I assume there's some interest for chair, vice chair, and secretary.
Can we do what we did last year? Do that at our next meeting?
You guys want to do that? Does that
I
sound
would
good?
agree with that.
Yeah, I think that's
so.
Yeah, I'd make a motion.
So
So May.
I'll need a motion and then a second.
I would make a motion that we table the election of officers until our May meeting. This is Bill Yankee.
Thanks, Bill.
This is Rod, second.
So we got a motion by Commissioner Yankee and a second by Commissioner Wagner.
Can I interrupt?
Sure.
As we're talking about this election of officers, one thing that I would ask of the commission, because of the timing of everything, can we have you guys appoint two people to sign contracts that are close proximity to us right now? And I was thinking with maybe Ron and Rod Wagner, and we could transport the contracts up without having to mail everything. Would that be acceptable?
It was
Yes,
as far as
May.
I'm concerned. Yes.
I believe we probably need a motion for that.
Exactly.
I'll move that we allow those two commissioners to sign documents for this particular meeting.
Guys. Who's Larry?
Larry Suker.
Okay. We have a motion by Commissioner Suker. Do we have a second?
Kellen Lancaster, I second it.
Thanks, Kellen. Those approved?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Okay, aye. Motion passed. Okay, so Next would be the approval of the minutes from January 8th, 2020. Has everybody had a chance to look at those, and do I have a motion for that?
This is Purcell. I move to approve the minutes.
I second, Yankee.
Let's get a vote on that then. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. So next would be our legislator update. If you want to move to that?
Yeah, did we do both then? Okay,
Yeah.
Okay.
We're,
sure.
everything's on track?
Yep. So legislative update. It was kind of a hectic legislative season. A lot of running back and forth. I think that's somewhat normal, although maybe not. I'll give you an update, and Steve Wolf from the SEO will provide an update on some of the things that impact at least our two agencies that went through legislature. The first one I'll start with was House Bill 1, Senate File 1. That's the general budget. There was some movement throughout the process to remove the Board of Control out of Water Development Account 1. That ended up failing and did not happen. All in all, our budget was essentially as submitted to the governor with, we submitted our budget of $8,098,333, and that's what ended up coming out of the rigmarole. So nothing gained, nothing hurt there. The next bill I'll talk about is House Bill 51. This is Professional Services Procurement Amendments. And in short, what this does, and the major impact to our agency, is it changes the selection of non-resident firms, among other things, but this is what impacts us the most. What this language is basically saying is it changes how we select resident or non-resident firms. The current setup is that if we have fewer than three resident firms submit an application for a project, then we can consider an out-of-state firm. The language that changed that now says that if any resident firm submits, that we cannot consider a non-resident firm. So that's a pretty significant change. And it does other things, and we're trying to figure out everything it does, but that's the most significant one. Next one I'll talk about is House Bill 81. That's the Emergency Water Projects account. We had a lot of discussion on that during our last Select Water Commission meeting. I don't know. But essentially what that is, that ended up being almost identical to what we discussed during Select Water Committee, with the exception of how the funding for the seed money, where it came from. And it went to conference committee, and the decision was made that half of the $5 million, so $2.5 million came out of Water Development Account 1, and $2.5 million came out of the STIPA, which is the Strategic Investment and Projects account. So all in all, we're funding half of the seed money for emergency water bill. Not great, not bad. Next bill I'll talk about is House Bill 97. That's the omnibus water bill for construction. Several things happened to this. Early in the process, they added their amended Goshen Irrigation District into the bill for an amount of $200,000 for design associated with the tunnel collapse. They also added $201,795 to the small water rehab account. And I'll talk a little bit about this on the next bill too, but what they tried to do is eliminated one of the UW research projects in the planning bill, and they tried to move that into the construction bill for small water. But what really happened in the end though is when they removed it from the planning bill, that was a account 1 appropriation, and what they did in the construction bill is used account 2 projects. So they basically just took $202,000 out of our rehab account and increased the small water budget. They told me that they would address that at the next legislative session and move that money around from account 1 to account 2. I think it's probably more effort than it might be worth at that point, but we'll see what happens with that. Another thing that was amended into the construction bill has to do with the prior appropriation for the West Fork Reservoir. That appropriation was originally 2018 or 16? 2018 appropriation for $4.7 million and had to do with a land swap for the reservoir to allow us to do a land swap so that it's with the Forest Service and other lands. But what the amendment, so this went to conference committee too, and what it ended up happening is the beneficiaries in the basin have recently secured a $1.25 million grant from the federal government. And what they're trying to do is start the work on West Fork with that 1.25. So the language in this amendment basically says that this 1.25 grant can be used for both the Wyoming and the Colorado pro rata shares, and to meet the obligations or their funding obligations under that original appropriation. As part of the conference committee, they elected to not free up the entire appropriation of 4.7, but only to free up a 1-to-1 match on the federal grant. So they freed up 1.25 million out of the original appropriation to match the 1.25 in federal grant. And that was basically it for the construction project, or the construction bill. Next bill is the planning bill. This bill, Senate File 6.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Sundance Tank, that passed?
That did pass, yes. And that was actually in the original bill. That was not an amendment.
Oh, okay.
What was the total on that?
225, I believe. Yeah, that was done by Select Water prior to session. Next bill. Go ahead.
He just said thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Next bill, Senate File 61. This is the planning bill. This bill went to conference committee. We had a lot of correspondence on this throughout the session. Initially, they amended a 90-10 funding split for planning studies. During conference committee, that was negotiated out, so that is not in the bill. But what did happen with an amendment is they deleted a project, the Sheridan Municipal Watershed Wildfire Hazard Mitigation Assessment Phase 2 project. That's a $120,000 project. It did create language in the bill that basically says that the commission can reissue the contract without legislative action or additional bidding requirements for the contract. So the intent of this amendment was to have myself meet with the I apologize. Got a glitch for a second thing. Can you call, somebody call Rod Wagner? I believe that's him trying to call me.
Hello?
That may be. I apologize. I thought maybe somebody was trying to get a hold of me. Jerry Geis, are you on the phone?
He was.
Can
Maybe
somebody
we're
call
losing guys.
Geis?
Guys are Wagner.
Which one? What, Geis or Wagner?
Geis.
Geis.
We're trying to get Jerry on the phone. Apologize. Back to the Sheridan Wildfire Project. They've asked myself to get together with the state forester to see if we can do these more efficiently. It basically puts this project on a 1-year hiatus. If we can't find efficiencies and we think that the project is still the best way to conduct it through our program, then we don't have to bid it. We can just reissue the contract to the existing contractor. The other thing that it did is it deleted one of the UW water research projects. It deleted the project, the robust, low-cost, no-depth measurements and high-resolution modeling to improve water supply forecasting in Wyoming. That total was $201,795. That is the money they tried to put into the small water account too. So that's what happened with the planning bill.
You want to mention the team is up for August, the 90-10 and the whole issue.
So one of the things that I'll be bringing to you in the August meeting is reevaluating our application fee and seeing what your desire is for that. The reason I say that is if we don't address it or at least look at it, it's likely to be legislated in again next year. There's a big desire to evaluate the application fee for planning projects. So I did make that promise to the legislature during the conference committee. The next project that we had been tracking all along was Senate File 75, which was the in-stream flow bill. That bill passed the Senate and it went through the 2 committees in the House, but then it ended up dying on the floor and did not become a bill. I'm going to mention 2 other bills, and those are House Bill 50 and 52. Both those bills play along with House Bill 51, and those deal with contracting and public works contracting, and we have not had a whole lot of time to review those, but I believe some of the changes have to do with bonding and construction contracting and stuff like that. So we will evaluate that. I've got Steve Wolf sitting here on the ready. He will give a brief update on the bills that the state engineer's office was following.
Can we get a quick break? We have a.
Yeah, so Jerry's having a hard time with his landline, so can we call him on his cell phone? Do we know how to?
Do you want to take a 5-minute break or 3-minute break?
Yeah, let's take about a 3-minute break so we can get Larry back online, and we'll convene again in about 3 minutes. So Mike, you can put some clothes on too.
You want me to Skype? Yeah.
No one wants that.
While we got this little break, I'd like to say one thing. This is Purcell. I went through about 18 legislative sessions, and I was thinking, this is probably, in the top 3 or 4 of the most complex sessions I can ever remember. And I think we should congratulate our director and staff for for getting us through this morass. It was quite a process with a lot of independent thinking by our Select Water Committee chairman and other legislators. So I just go on the record to say I was very pleased with the outcome, given all the various issues that was thrown at them.
Agreed.
I'd second that.
Thank you.
I will speak for that too. I think, great job.
This is Rod, and I don't know if you guys are understanding, but it sounds like they might go into a special session and rework the budget, so we may not be out of the woods yet.
Good point.
Guys, you guys might go on hold for a second as we try to get Jerry on the line.
Hopefully we don't wipe them all out, huh?
Hello.
Hi, Jerry, this is Brandon. We're gonna try to, can you hear me? Hello?
Hello?
Hi, Jerry, this is Brandon. Can you hear me?
Is it muted still? Or, oh.
I think you just hung up.
Yeah, you might try him again if he hung up.
Okay, so before I did that, I'd flash over to the conference line to make sure everybody was still there.
Are you still there, commission?
Hit the flash button again. That one with all the people on it.
I did. Okay. Commissioner, are you there?
Are you still muted or no?
That's great.
Is that off? his bills.
Well, good morning, Commissioners. Again, this is Steve Wolf from the State Engineer's Office.
Hi, Jerry, I'll put you on speaker.
I'm going to talk about 3 pieces of legislation that were discussed this year in the session. It'll be brief because all 3 of them ultimately failed, which probably was a good thing. But first one was House Bill 58, which generally changed and restricted some of the ways our field staff can order in measuring devices to water users. Quite a bit of discussion on that one. That ultimately failed. The second bill was Senate File 74. It was entitled Permit Not Required for Using a De Minimis Amount of Water. This was a bill that was really targeted against our permitting of beaver dam analogs. So it had the intention was to be very focused, but the way the bill was written was problematic, and it could have had a lot of unintended consequences. And plus, I think just generally in our office, we had a problem with a definition of a de minimis amount of water that didn't need a permit. So again, we had a lot of concerns about this bill. It did ultimately fail. I think we expected this topic to come up as an interim, whether with Select Water or Joint Ag, and it was never discussed. So I don't expect there will be discussion during the interim at this point. The third bill was Senate File 95. It was entitled Wyoming Colorado River Committee. Ultimately, it was set up by a committee of mostly governor appointees and 2 legislators to oversee a lot of the activities our office has with Colorado River interstate activities. The initial bill had some significant problems in that it had some authorizations needed from the committee. It had oversight authority on our Colorado River Commissioner. We thought there were some serious regulatory or statute issues with it. That language was ultimately amended out, so the bill did become, I guess, better in our minds, maybe more duplicating more of our efforts. And again, that bill failed as well. So those were the 3 main bills that impact our office, but no changes. So happy to answer any questions.
Commissioners, questions for Steve? Comments?
Thanks for all you do.
Thank you.
Okay, so I guess
You know, this is Purcell. I wonder if these are things that they'll try to bring back through Select Water again. Are you going to see these again, you suppose? And if so, we better have the discussion during the Select Water Committee meetings rather than being have them go around us. I don't know.
The measuring device bill, I guess I don't expect to come back around. I think we had enough discussion and recognize there just needs to be improved communication between our office and water users on some of these issues. The de minimis water bill, yes, in some form I expect it to come back. Like I said, I expected it to be part of interim topics, but it did not show up there. The Colorado River Committee bill in that form, I guess I don't expect it to come back just because the governor's office was very opposed to this, kind of stepped on their toes, I think. But I think we will continue to see push from certain legislators to be involved in Colorado River interstate activities. And we've got a process in place now that will allow that.
Okay, good.
Brandon.
Thanks, Steve.
Interim topics will involve us, like the discussion on the small water and application fees and stuff like that. If you want to mention that.
And then, so speaking of interim topics, since we're on it, there are a couple. One of them would be the application fees. The other topic that I've heard from legislature is maybe looking at small water program and capping that in some fashion, whether it be to straighten up criteria or to put a firm cap on it. So that'll likely come up at some point. And then another one that from Joint Ag was aging infrastructure. That's kind of a no-brainer that'll come up, but we'll be heavily involved in whatever that looks like. So those were some of the interim topics that we had heard that pertain to us at least.
Okay, I don't think we need to vote on any of that stuff, so we'll move on to item number 7. Brandon, you want to take that?
You bet. For the rest of the meeting and anything that requires action, I just wanted you guys to know we've already met with Select Water Committee, and any actions that we're taking today, they basically approved contingent on your approval. So everything we're talking about now has already gone through Select Water Committee, and we should be ready to go. So item number 7 on your agenda, and if you're following along with the e-notebook, it's on page 15 of the PDF, is new level 1 and 2 project applications that we received March 1st. We received 13 projects. There is a table of those projects on page 15 if you wanted to look at them. I believe most of the commissioners have already seen them. It was the same email that Barry sent out yesterday or the day before. Rather than go through each individual one, are there any questions on anything with that?
Okay, are there any discussion or comments, or is there any? Oh, Barry?
Yeah, this is Barry. Just real quick, just so the commission knows, the process now, you've seen the list of applications that we received. There were 13 applications. That's the exact same amount as we got last year. And so our project managers are busy putting their recommendations together. Typically, we do site visits. It's in our criteria, but obviously, given the extenuating circumstances this year, we're not doing site visits. And putting together those recommendations, talking to the sponsors and so forth. And what you'll have at your May meeting then will be more formal recommendations on each of these projects. And so we'll have a full discussion on each of these at the May meeting.
Great. Is there any conflicts with that list, commissioners?
This is Purcell. I don't have a conflict, but what are we getting into on the Lake Hattie full utilization study? Does that have to do with the how much water they can store?
Mike, I believe it does, and I have not looked at the application yet, so that's one that we want to look at fairly closely.
Yeah. That sounds.
Well, I think we should do it. I'm just wondering if we're going to get between warring factions over there, but I think we should do it.
Yeah.
And Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Mike.
I said, Mr. Chairman, with that, I would move that we approve these applications to proceed to the next step.
We don't need approval
I need to
at this time.
back up a little bit. Good. Yeah, Brandon, this is Bill. I do have, you asked about conflicts, and I do have a conflict, but I believe it's the last one on the list. I can't get my computer to scroll down fast enough here, but it's the Lander, I think it's called storage, municipal storage, and I talked to Barry about this. That's dealing with Worthen Reservoir, and there is a possibility that might be looked at as doing more than just storing water for the city, and that we might be looking at actually trying to get some irrigation water stored there, and that would affect the ditch and the system that I'm on. So I do have a conflict with that last one. That I believe it's listed as Lander storage or something for municipal storage.
Yes, Commissioner Yankee. Yes, this is Barry again. Yes, we got your email, and we've had that discussion. And so the list that I sent out maybe a day or two ago, which has the commissioner assignments, we purposely left you off that project.
Okay, thank you.
Just so everybody knows though, we don't need a motion on these applications at this time.
Not till May.
This is just information for you at this point. That'll be in our May meeting.
You okay?
Yep.
Okay, so now we've already talked a little bit about item 8, the location of the 2020 summer tour meeting. And it looks like the consensus is Wheatland and Douglas area? Is that-
Wheatland, Douglas, Torrington, Triangle-ish area.
Does that sound good for everybody? Discussion?
I think it's good. This is
August
Kellen.
12th through 14th.
I'd like to see the
August
tunnels
12th
and
through 14th.
these dams that are falling apart.
So
Yeah,
that,
this is Bill, I agree.
so that would be August 12th through the 14th. I don't know, we probably don't need action on that, do we?
Nope, no.
So, but just everybody in agreement, we'll get that on our schedules and it'll be exciting to go up there and have a little summer break. Hopefully we're all can get together by then.
And we'll start planning that and we'll be ready to discuss it in May.
Okay, item number 9, planning closeout memos.
All right, so I'm going to give you the cliff notes for the planning closeout memos. Typically, I'd like the project managers to do this, but given our situation, I would like to be very brief and go through these very quickly. Each one of these projects does have a motion that is a part of the ebook, but I will slide over my paperwork to Ron and he could read the motion if that works for all of you guys as we go through this. The first project is the Bedford Water Supply Master Plan project. This was Kevin Boyce was the project manager. The original contract was $82,302. We had $43 left over. The Bedford Rural Water System was built with WWDC grant and loan 30 years ago. This project went and reevaluated that and assessed the current conditions. The project finding and recommendation was generally that it was in pretty good shape, with ample source and storage capacity. Recommend the district should plan to budget to overhaul PRVs, tanks, T's, appurtenances with the system. Looked at some of the fire hydrants and made recommendations to add some transmission capacity. Determined the water loss was an issue and further investigation is needed to determine the location of the losses. It did find that the district's income is greater than the expenses, so they are building a reserve. And their debt retirement for USDA was retired in 2018, and 2019 they retired their debt with us. So the WDO recommendation is to accept final report, and then upon completion of the level 1 study, the district has no immediate plans to advance with improvements in 2020, maybe in the future.
And on that, I'll read the motion. I move to acceptance of the Bedford Water Supply Master Plan Level 1 project report as being complete, and further the WWDC makes the following findings relative to this project. That the commission recommend proceeding to the next level of the project development upon the submittal of an appropriate funding application by the sponsor.
I move that we accept that. This is Kellen.
This is Rod, second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion carried.
I would like to make a comment on the Bedford water system. If there's a poster child water system for the state of Wyoming, these people should be up for nomination. They really run a good show. This is Kellen. Thanks.
Thanks, Kellen. That's good to hear.
Sounds like a good investment. Next project, Big Piney 1R well for the town of Big Piney. This was a groundwater exploration grant. The grant amount was $162,750. We ended up saving $15,622. This project drilled a replacement well for a long-time water supply. It was completed in June of 2018. The WWDO recommendation is the new well is presently incorporated into the water system with the other town of Big Piney wells. WDO advises acceptance of the Big Piney 1R well groundwater exploration grant project as being complete and required final submittals received.
This is Purcell. I so move.
Okay.
Larry Singer has a second.
Who was that second?
Who was the second?
Larry Singer.
Next project, Big Sandy Watershed Study, Sublette County Conservation District and Sublette County Watershed Study. The results identified 52 projects, 30 for the small water for new development, 21 for rehab. Many of them are wells for stock water, diversion structures, pipelines, storage, spring development, typical small water projects. One of the key goals of the project that was accomplished was the development of a GIS water rights tool. The WWDO recommendation is the Big Sandy Watershed Study provides an analysis of watershed conditions and through the projects identified in the management and rehabilitation plan demonstrates how these types of projects provide public benefit. Based on this study, the office recommends supporting the funding of small water program projects and conventional projects within this watershed on a case-by-case basis.
I'll read that proposed motion. I move acceptance of the Big Sandy Watershed Study Level 1 Study Project Report as being complete, and further, the WWDC makes the following findings relative to this project. That the Commission recommend proceedings to the next level of the project development upon the submittal of an appropriate funding application by the sponsor.
This is Mark Cott, second.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Motion carried.
Next project, the Guernsey Golf Course well for the town of Guernsey. This is another groundwater grant exploration grant. Original contract amount was $75,375. We ended up with a savings of $21,740. Basically, we found a good well for them, and everything appears to be successful. The WWDO advises the completion of the project is achieved and acceptance of the final report submittals.
Now, this project sounds like something I want to tour. The proposed motion, I move acceptance of the Guernsey Golf Course well groundwater exploration grant project report as being complete.
This is Bill, I second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion carried.
Next project's Horse Creek Watershed Study for South Goshen Conservation District. Original contract amount was $267,000 and essentially used all but 7 cents of the project. This was a watershed study.
Funding.
The results of this recommended 50 potential watershed improvement projects, 9 irrigation projects, 38 livestock, wildlife, water supply projects, and 3 projects include stream stabilization projects, potential modifications to existing diversions, the such. WWDO recommendation, the Horse Creek Watershed Study provides an analysis of watershed conditions and through the projects identified in the management and rehabilitation plan, demonstrates how these types of projects provide public benefit. Based on this study, the office recommends supporting the funding of small water program projects and conventional projects within the watershed on a case-by-case basis.
The proposed motion, I move acceptance of the Horse Creek Watershed Level 1 Study Project Report as being complete, and further, the WWDC makes the following findings relative to this project. That the Commission recommend proceeding to the next level of the project development upon the submittal of an appropriate funding application by the sponsor. Commissioners?
Purcell seconds.
Those in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion carries.
Next project is level 2 project for Little Snake River Valley Municipal Water Supply for the towns of Baggs and Dixon. Original contract amount was $130,000, essentially used the whole contract. Wink Associates did the project. This was a level 2 feasibility study to determine the potential for a regional system with Baggs, Dixon, and Savory. The report analyzed 3 alternatives. One would be to expand Baggs' water treatment plant to service 3 towns. And second one would be to expand Dixon's existing infiltration gallery, and then associated projects that would transfer the water to all 3. And then third alternative was to purchase land and build a new infiltration on the Little Snake River and supply all the users. Because of the nature and the complexity of this project, the report recommended the formation of a steering committee and an application for a level 2 phase 2 planning project. The steering committee would help the engineer focus on a single system for the level 2 design. I will mention we did receive an application for a phase 2 of this project. The WWDO recommendation is to accept the Little Snake River Valley Municipal Water Supply Level 2 Study Project Final Report. The WWDO recently received an application for the phase 2 project.
And the proposed motion. I move acceptance of the Little Snake River Valley Municipal Water Supply Level 2 Study Project Report as being complete, and further, the WWDC makes the following findings relative to this project. That the Commission recommend proceeding to the next level of project development upon the submittal of an appropriate funding application by the sponsor. Based on the findings of the final report, the project is determined to be in public interest. The project functions and services cannot realistically be provided by any person, association, or corporation engaged in private enterprise.
This is Mark. I second that.
Those in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion carries.
I do have a question. I do have a question. I noticed on this new application, it's the Conservation District's the sponsor. Is that correct?
No. Dixon and Baggs.
Barry can respond.
Mr. Chairman, actually the application is from the town of Dixon and town of Baggs, and that is on your spreadsheet.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Okay, thanks.
Next project, Lower Laramie River Watershed Study for the Platte County Resource District. Jody Pring, project manager. Original contract amount $272,000. Used all but 74 cents of that one.
Trying to show somebody up, huh?
This was a watershed study. Ultimately identified 32 potential improvement projects, 7 of which were irrigation type projects, 17 livestock, wildlife water supply projects, and 8 projects that included stream stabilization, modifications to existing diversion structures and such. Water development recommendation, the Lower Laramie River Watershed Study provides an analysis of watershed conditions and through the projects identified in the management and rehabilitation plan, demonstrates how these types of projects provide public benefit. Based on this study, the office recommends supporting the funding of small water program projects and conventional projects within the watershed on a case-by-case basis.
The proposed motion, I move acceptance of the Lower Laramie River Watershed Study Project report as being complete, and further the WWDC makes the following findings relative to this project. That the commission recommend proceeding to the next level of the project development upon the submittal of an appropriate funding application by the sponsor.
Second, this is Rod.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
Next project, Paposia Watershed Study Phase 2. Jody Preen, project manager. Original contract amount $230,100, savings of $113. Again, watershed study findings. Update of the water budget model developed in the first phase of level 1. Identified potential locations for some micro storage facilities off the main channels. Did an evaluation of the Worthen Meadows Reservoir. Assess the feasibility of aquifer storage and recovery to retime water supply, particularly in the middle fork of the Paposia, to increase late season river flow. The WWDO recommendation, the Paposia Watershed Study provides an analysis of watershed conditions and through the projects identified in the management and rehabilitation plan, demonstrates how these types of projects provide public benefit. Based on this study, the office recommends supporting the funding of projects within the watershed on a case-by-case basis.
And the proposed motion, I move acceptance to the Popo Aggie Watershed Study Project report as being complete, and further, the WWDC makes the following findings relative to this project. That the commission recommend proceedings to the next level of the project development upon the submittal of an appropriate funding application by the sponsor.
Larry with a second.
Thanks, Larry. Those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Next project is the Powder Tongue Northeast River Basin Plan Groundwater Update. Jody Preen, project manager. This was consultant was the Wyoming State Geological Survey. Original contract amount $275,000. Savings of $81,571. That really showed him up, Jody. The report presents the most current assessment of combined groundwater resources in Wyoming, in the Wyoming portion of the two river basins. Some of the project findings, it identified major, most widely used aquifers, defined the three-dimensional extent of the aquifers, described the hydraulic, hydrogeologic, hydrogeochemical properties of the aquifers and confining units, estimated the quantity of groundwater in the aquifers, described the aquifer recharge areas, estimated aquifer recharge rates, discussed the concepts of safe yield and sustainable yield, and described implications of hydrologically connected groundwater and surface water, described and evaluated existing groundwater studies and models, identified opportunities for future groundwater development, and the WWDO recommendation. State and federal agencies in Wyoming should pursue development of a comprehensive statewide database for water quality and aquifer physical characteristics. Update recharge evaluation. The recharge evaluation in this study could easily be updated. As new data is collected, this would result in more refined results. And pursue obtaining more detailed geologic mapping. I'll turn it over to Ron for the motion.
Proposed motions, I move acceptance of the Powder Tongue Northeast River Basin's Water Plan Update Groundwater Study as being complete, and further, the WWDC makes the following findings relative to this project. That the Commission recommend proceedings to the next level of the project development upon the submittal of an appropriate funding application.
This is Bill, I second.
Thanks, Bill. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
Final project, Saratoga Water Master Plan for the Saratoga Carbon County Impact Joint Powers Board. Original contract $167,060. Contract savings $35,550.10. The project findings. In general, the system performs adequately for present and future demands of Saratoga, but there are issues regarding system storage, water age, infrastructure age, and operations. Rehabilitation of supply wells could significantly increase the capacity of the wells. Decommission the existing 1 million gallon tank and install a new 750,000 gallon tank. Upgrade the SCADA system. Implement a water loss program. And replacement program for transmission and distribution will address the issues of breaks and water loss. The WWDO recommendation is to accept the Saratoga Master Plan Level 1 Study Project Final Report.
And the proposed motion. I move acceptance of the Saratoga Water Master Plan Level 1 Study Project Report as being complete, and further, the WWDC makes the following findings relative to this project. That the Commission recommend proceeding to the next level of the project development upon the submittal of an appropriate funding application by the sponsor.
Larry with the second.
Thanks, Larry. Those in favor?
Aye.
Probably should have been asking for those opposed. Motion carries.
All right, next on the agenda is planning amendments. And if you're following along on the e-notebook, it's on page 43 or under tab B of the bookmarks. And actually on page 44 is a summary table. These two projects, first one I'll discuss is the Laprelle Irrigation District Rehabilitation Project. We were asking for something slightly different on this. We just received, and we're still going through the scope negotiations with the consultant on this. We did not have time to finalize the scope and put an agreement together. What we would like to ask is if the commission can make a motion to allow us to finalize that and to enter into an agreement or an amendment once we have that done, without you seeing what the true scope is at this point. Our intent is to have this done within the next couple of weeks, and we didn't want to wait until the May meeting to get them going again. They've got some timelines with their geotechnical investigation and their drilling program and such. So I guess I would ask for a motion that would allow us to continue to develop the scope and go ahead and execute it once it is, and for you guys to have somebody be able to sign that agreement once we've come to an agreement on the scope. One other thing that I'll point out for all the projects in the planning bill, any motion we make will need to be pending the governor's signature. The planning bill, to my knowledge, has not been signed, but the construction bill has. If you guys like any further discussion or have any questions on LaPrel, please let me know.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
how did you come up with the $650,000?
That was when we originally did this, we had I think a $200 or $150,000 amendment to replace part of the original study. And then we asked for $500,000 to do future unknown work on the project. So we are now we just combined those two amounts to put it into one amendment to proceed. Makes
Should
sense?
the proposed motion allow you that flexibility, but to cap it with amount not to exceed $650,000?
That would be fine. That's all we have the appropriation for, so it's got to be that.
Okay.
This is Rod, I so move.
second.
This is Purcell, I second.
Thanks, Mike. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Next project is the Norwood River Level 2. This is Amendment 6. This is a time extension amendment. This project it was part of the original project that identified alkali, and it's the same contractor that assisting on alkali, and because of their focus on alkali, this one has kind of taken a back burner, but this time extension will finish the project up, and it's a 1-year time extension.
Commissioners, your pleasure.
This is Purcell, I have moved to approve the amendment.
Mark, second. Larry with the second.
Mark with a second, thank you. Those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Okay. The next set of projects is the 2020 planning project contracts. Again, this will be contingent upon governor's signature of the bill. On page 52 of the e-notebook is a summary table. These are the same projects we've been discussing for the last 13 months or better. If there are no conflicts to any of these projects, I would recommend that we approve them all in a block.
Okay. Commissioner, any discussion on any of these projects? Discussion?
I also move that we approve, or make a motion that we approve all of these as a block.
This is Rod, I second.
Those in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. Motion carries.
Okay, so the next project is a groundwater grant project brought to us by the town of Torrington. They are asking for $120,000 from our groundwater exploration program. What they would like to do is, currently we're performing a level 1 master plan for the city of Torrington. As part of the work that was done early in the study, it was recommended that an emergency well be established. There's concern for all of their supply right now is from 3 wells very near each other, and then I believe 1 other well. But the 3 wells that provide majority of the water are basically the same system. They all feed the treatment plant with a 24-inch pipeline that are near the river. Their concern is emergency like lightning strike or local flooding or a break of the 24-inch transmission main would put them out of water. So what this well would do, it would supplement an existing well number 15 that would then supply between the two, this new well and the existing well would be able to adequately supply the city in these emergency situations. The application did have concurrence from the state engineer's office that it would fall within the municipal cap related to the modified North Platte Decree or the Platte River Recovery Implementation Program. So from the SEO's perspective and their weighing on it, this well is okay. Is there any other discussion on this application or any questions?
Commissioners, discussion? What's your pleasure?
Yeah, this is Bill. I would move that we accept this groundwater grant recommendation.
Do I have a second?
Larry with the second.
Thanks, Larry. Those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Next item is the UW Water Research Program MOU. As we discussed, this in the bills, one of the projects under this program was removed during the legislative season, and so this MOU for this year would be for $243,888 for the remaining research project.
Mr. Chair, I've got a question. What was the original funding on that? Do you have that in front of you?
400, yeah, I do.
Was it?
It was 201,795 more. The original was 445,683.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
And we've discussed that 201,795 many times.
Yeah,
in front of the legislature.
Well, hopefully that gives them enough money.
I shall move that we accept the UW Water Research Program amount.
Do we have a second?
This is Bill. I second.
Thanks, Bill. Those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item, small water.
Small water. So the first one that I will talk about, if you're following along the notebook, is on page 495 or under tab F. This is the small water program, account 1. Through legislation, the total amount appropriated for this was $1,063,000. Of the eligible applications that we received, and I, just so you know, on page 495 is a spreadsheet that lists all these projects, and it's broken out by conservation district and application. With the appropriation, we would be able to fund all of the applications we received for the small water program, account 1. Are there anything that anybody wants to discuss in more depth on this?
There was one.
This is Purcell. I just have a question.
Yes, Mike.
It seems like a lot of these districts have a lot of these projects, are they all progressing? Are we overloading them? Are these some things that will be completed in the near future? Or are we stockpiling money for things that might not be built for quite a few years?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Purcell, every year since I've taken over the program in 2015, I produce a list of projects that are due to expire that year and send a notice out to the districts early in the year, usually around the May timeframe, so there's still time for them to get last minute designs taken care of and construction completed during the construction season. Included in that letter is a sort of a very explicitly laid out timeline that if they don't have construction completed by early October, then they can't complete their required advertising prior to our deadline of December 1 for the final payment. And so the districts are getting used to this timeline. Every year the list gets shorter and shorter. And I very rarely have any districts that withdraw projects. So I would say yes, in large part, we are getting them all completed. And if I have any that are withdrawn, it's usually for legitimate, out of our control kind of federal permitting or health issues or those kind of reasons.
And Jody, can you state your full name for the record too, please?
Thank you. Yes, this is Jody Pavlika. I'm the Small Water Project Program Manager for the office.
Thank you.
Mr. Purcell, were you asking the backlog? Is that what the backlog of these districts?
I think she answered it.
Okay. Very well.
There was one unqualified project on that?
Mr. Chairman, yes, thank you. There was one program that we determined to be not eligible under the Account 1 projects, and it was because, the application was requesting a buried electrical supply, which is not an eligible category under our program criteria at this time. So that one was recommended do not fund.
Thank you. Commissioners, your pleasure.
This is Rod. I move to approve.
This is Mark, second.
Thanks for the second, Mark. Those, yeah, this is this motion is for Account 1 only.
If
Or do
it's
you wanna-
okay,
wanna
if
move
we
them all?
move on to Account 2 and have discussion and then approve everything.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. So, small water project for Account 2. We actually, in the last Select Water Commission meeting that went into the bill, we requested $500,000 for this account for small water program. Through legislation, they increased this amount by $201,795. You guys heard that number before? The intent of what they're trying to do is to fund all of the projects that we received eligible applications for. And so we did an analysis assuming that we would only have the $500,000. And with the $500,000 appropriation, there were 5 projects that we could not fund. We went in and the 5 that we chose, we did an analysis based on, per criteria, the number of projects that these districts had. And so we selected 5 projects, and if you're looking at the spreadsheet on page 598 of the e-notebook, those 5 projects are highlighted in blue. So at your pleasure, we have the ability to include the $201,795 into the small water program. With that addition, we would be able to fund all of the eligible applications that we received this year. During the conference committee, my notion to them was that I would recommend to the commission that we fund all of these, but that it would be your decision if you wanted to increase above the previously determined 500,000 or go to the 701, 795 budget. I will also point out that there were two projects that we determined were not eligible, and the reason for both of those, they were mainly for flumes, and that does not meet our criteria. So other than those two, at your pleasure, we can fund all of them with the appropriation we received, or if you would prefer to limit to what we took to Select Water Committee originally, there would be 5 that we would not fund.
Commissioners, discussion?
This is Purcell. Would you basically frame the motion that you basically discussed with the legislature? Our previous motion is that we don't do 5. Now you're suggesting we add the 5, aren't you? Or at least you said you would ask.
That I would ask. That is correct.
So why don't you frame a motion for us that would take care of that?
Okay. I guess the motion would be to accept all small water applications, all eligible small water applications.
For both count 1 and
Including
count
those
2?
including those not previously approved in our previous recommendations. Is that correct?
Yes, except that
Five.
we did not have detailed discussions on the individual projects. All we did was appropriate money because we did not have the applications at that time. We were only talking dollars and our projection of the applications we thought we would get. Had we had these applications prior to that meeting, I believe that we would have recommended that all of these eligible projects be approved.
Okay.
So I guess
So basically, we're breaking the bank today on small water projects, or we're right on the number, is what you're saying for both new development and rehab projects.
with the appropriation from legislature, yes, that is correct.
Further discussion, commissioners?
I'd like to ask a question.
Sure.
This is Kellen. And I don't have the tab open to show where the projects are, but are they evenly distributed across the state? Or are they specific to a general area? They're a pretty good representation of the state benefiting from this, or just a certain area?
Mr. Chairman,
599.
I'm sorry, Barry.
Page 599 has the map and the distribution.
Kellen, I don't know if you can see the e-notebook, but on page 599 shows a map of the distribution of it. And there is a pretty good distribution across the state.
Thank you.
Any other discussion, commissioners?
This is Purcell. I'll move approval.
Larry with the second.
Larry with the second.
Yes.
Those in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye.
Who was the opposed vote? Was there an opposed vote? Or we just got a little
I
delay?
was late, but I was not opposed.
Oh, okay. We get a little bit of delay on this end, I think, so. Thank you, Commissioners. Motion passed.
Next group of projects, again, I would suggest that we treat this as a block unless there are any conflicts for a particular project for any commissioners. And I am looking at page 662 of the e-notebook. Again,
And what item is that on the agenda?
item 15.
Okay.
2020 construction project agreements for account 1.
What page was that on? You got 552?
662 of the e-notebook.
662.
662.
Okay.
So if there's no discussion, I would ask for a motion to accept construction project agreements for the block.
Discussion?
Bill, I move that we accept the construction project agreements, the whole block.
Larry with the second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, the next block, we need to pull at least one project out. I believe that Bill has declared a conflict with the enterprise project. So as we go through the approval, we'll have to make two motions, one with and without enterprise. Now I'm on page 752 of the e-notebook that lists all the projects and the terms of these blocks for construction project agreements in account 2. I would ask for a motion to approve the block of projects excluding enterprise canal lining 2020 project.
This is Kellen. I also have a conflict of interest on Dry Creek irrigation.
Okay,
Can you pull that one out too?
absolutely. So as I understand it, the new motion, are there any other conflicts in this
Yes.
group?
Commissioners, any other conflicts?
So I would suggest a motion to approve the block of 2020 construction project agreements for account 2 with the exception of the Dry Creek Irrigation District Transmission Pipeline and Enterprise Canal Lining 2020 projects.
This is Purcell, also move.
Do we have a second?
This is Kellen, I second it. Kellen, I second it.
Thanks, Kellen. Those in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries.
All right, so the next one then would be a motion to accept the Dry Creek Irrigation District Transmission Pipeline, noting that Kellen has a conflict.
I will so move.
This is Mark.
Dry Creek.
This is Purcell, I'll second.
Thanks, Mike. Those in favor, I assume Kellen's gonna recluse himself from this vote?
That is correct.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
I would suggest that, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I would suggest that the next motion would be to accept the Enterprise Canal Lining project with Bill Yankee having recused himself.
Larry Suka, I move we accept Enterprise motion.
Do we have a second?
This Sheridan, I'll second.
Thanks, Sheridan. Those approved?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries.
All right, so the next block under agenda item 17 would be the 2020 construction project amendments. I'll first ask, are there any conflicts in this block of projects?
This is item 17 on your agenda.
It's also page 859 of the e-notebook. Or tab J. Doesn't sound like we have any conflicts. So two things in this block. We have Goshen Irrigation District and Sundance Tank listed as project amendments. In reality, those two will not be amendments. Those two projects will have essentially no agreement. We've talked with the AG, and because of the legislation, the way it was written, we feel that we can just work out an agreement to document payment to those two entities without an agreement. So if everybody's inclined, that's how we'd prefer to do that and not establish an agreement for those two. So those two are listed under this in the agenda, but they would not have any sort of agreement. They would just be some sort of documentation that they've been invoiced and paid.
Do you want to remove those two then from this?
Be a list. So I guess the motion would be to approve this block with the exception of the Goshen Irrigation District and Sundance Tank.
Also move that we, Larry Suka, I so move that we approve the 2020 construction, plus the Goshen Irrigation District and the Sundance Tank.
Do we have
Second, Purcell.
those in favor? Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Motion carries. Do we need to do anything for the Goshen Irrigation District or the Sundance Tank?
I do not believe we do. That money was appropriated for Sundance. It's essentially a pass-through to pay them. I asked that the language for Goshen be written the same way. Andrew Coleman, unless I'm wrong, from our discussions, I don't believe we have to have any formal motion, do we?
No, I think it was, I don't think you need a formal motion on it. The way it was written seemed to, I think if you described a pass-through, I think is a good way to describe it. Pulling it up here just to make sure I've got it in front of me. So the language for Goshen was to pay shall grant through the commission an amount not to exceed $200,000 to pay for the planning, permitting, and design necessary to make the Goshen Irrigation Districts function in the manner intended. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong on this one, Brandon, that one has already been completed, basically.
Not Goshen. Sundance has been completed. Goshen is in progress right now.
Maybe we should get a motion on this.
We could get maybe Andrew chime in, but maybe a suggested motion for this would be to allow the office to
Pass those funds.
pass the funds to the Goshen Irrigation District and Sundance Tank.
Looks like water took action on it.
Yeah.
I think that sounds good to me.
Okay.
And then we'll make sure we go through the proper steps on that.
Mr. Chairman, I recommend the commission authorize the office to proceed with the transfer of funds to the Goshen Irrigation District and the town of Sundance in the amount of the appropriations with sufficient documentation to ensure that we're relieved of any future obligations relating to that appropriation.
I will second that, Larry.
Thanks, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries.
Okay,
Okay, so number 18.
18 on the agenda, Basin State Salinity Control applications. We did not receive any new applications for this year. So there's nothing, no action needed there. If it's okay, I'll just continue on.
Sure.
Next item is the future meeting schedule. This is on the final page of the e-notebook. The next meeting will be the May meeting, which is May 14th and 15th. This is a joint meeting with Select Water Committee, and it is in Cheyenne. So that's it for that. And if there are no questions on that, I do have one discussion item that I'd like to bring up to the group, if it's okay now.
Yeah.
Okay. The Water Development Office received a RFP from the Idaho Groundwater Appropriators. We've got an existing contract with this group to sell or to lease water from our Palisades account. The RFP is asking for us to propose a new lease agreement. We've had some discussions with the state engineer and myself. My proposal to the group is going to be to just extend our existing contract with the Idaho Groundwater Appropriators. We've got a meeting we're trying to establish for next Monday. We need to include the state engineer, who is an approver on the contract, and then the Wyoming Game and Fish is an advisor, and then the development office is the administrator of these contracts. So I do not believe that we need any commission approval, because the contract as it is now is through the office and not the commission. But I just wanted to inform you that that was my intent and that we're having those discussions. The RFP is due April 1st, but as I mentioned, and it was indicated in the email that we received, that they would likely be satisfied with just extending our current agreement. So there will really be no changes. We don't determine the rate of the water that we lease anyhow. So there's really not a whole lot to negotiate other than maybe time and amount, but I think we're tight on the amount anyhow. So it makes no sense to enter into some lengthy negotiation. We're pretty much laid out to what we have contracted right now. So I just wanted to inform you that that was going on and ask if there's any questions.
Is there any discussion from the state engineer's office? No? Okay.
That's pretty much SOP of what we've done in the past.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, with that,
I do have another.
Oh, go ahead.
I do have another discussion item. The changing world. We may be facing a situation where we aren't going to enjoy the revenues we've had in the past. So, I think we need to maybe have a discussion looking at our criteria seeing how far down that criteria we think we can go. But we may need to tighten up our spending. And I'm just bringing it up for those of you to kind of cogitate on that. But oil prices being what they are, and I don't know what gas activity. I know personally what oil prices are because I'm taking a whipping. But just food for thought. We may need to tighten our belt a little bit until things turn around. I don't know if there have been any new projections on mineral royalty income, but it might be the first time that we don't get our cap, and we need to watch that very carefully.
I agree with that, Mike, and I'm going off of memory, but based on the budget we submitted, in account 1, I believe we had roughly 25 to 28 million remaining for the second year of the biennium. That's after all these projects filter out. For account 2, I believe we are right at or a little below $3 million in account 2. And then for account 3, I believe we've got about 29 million remaining. And given the situation, I think I agree that we need to kind of look at how we're going to proceed in the future.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but in those projections, don't we assume we get full funding for the next biennium?
That is correct.
Okay.
And actually, I believe that assumes that we get the payment annually from the severance tax.
Mm-hmm.
We don't remember if it's annually or biennium, but if they do go to
It's
special,
annually.
I'm sorry, Mike.
I do believe it's annually, I think, isn't it?
Yeah,
But
yeah. So
never mind.
those numbers are based on the fall allotment, which may change.
Yeah, that's my point.
I think Mike hit it on the head that the only thing we can assume is that it's going to be different. You know, we're going to be facing some interesting times in the next few months to few years. So I agree with Mike on that.
I've got, if we're done there, I got one other comment that I would make. And that has to do with the state's response to COVID, to coronavirus. We received an email this morning. I have not read it, but I think what it's saying is that we may be working, some people may be working remotely and still trying to keep the offices open as much as we can with a skeletal crew. So there's a lot of moving parts going on in our world right now. I think we're fairly prepared to work remotely from home for the most part. So it's just a matter of how we implement that, and that'll be my next meeting, probably just as soon as we're done here.
And I'd like to add a thank you to the staff here for always being so professional and everything you guys do for us to keep us going. So, you know, you're a wonder for the entire state, and we appreciate it.
Thank you.
You're here.
Yeah, second that.
Good job. This is Purcell. I move we adjourn.
Do I have a second?
I've got you here. I got to get to the damn golf course.
I don't want to hear it.
Put your clothes on first.
All those in favor?
I'm tired.
Aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.
Aye.
Thank
Thanks,
you all
guys.
for your time.
Appreciate it.